This episode of GunBlog VarietyCast brought to you by lawofselfdefense.com. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to learn about your state's self-defense laws. Sign up for one of their online or in-person seminars or buy the book Law of Self-Defense and get 10% off when you use the discount code VARIETY at checkout. That's lawofselfdefense.com/variety. Sit back, relax, and take a ride with us on the GunBlog VarietyCast, episode 60. Welcome back to the GunBlog VarietyCast. I'm your host, Sean from NC GunBlog, and with me today is Adam from Guns, Cars, Tech Blog. How are you doing, Adam?
The baby's going to be a year old this week.
Yeah, I remember it was like episode 9. You're like, oh, well, I can't record. We only just got started. And
yeah.
Aaron had to take over for you.
Yeah, for the first time. Now she's done 3.
Well, it's a good thing we have her.
I know.
Let's get started with a tactical dog and fitness report. I spent the entire week in Charlotte, North Carolina. Didn't walk anywhere, and I'm glad to be home. I did get a new car, however. You remember how we were talking about how many miles I drive?
Right.
Final count. 76,618 miles in 2 years.
In 2 years?
In 2 years. It's a 2014.
That's a lot of miles.
That is. The new car is a Camry hybrid.
Well, that should be fun.
Well, okay, I guess.
You know, Camrys are a nice car.
I've driven it 33 miles so far.
Yeah?
I have no idea if it's going to be any good or not.
So, my almost 6-year-old nephew came over last weekend, along with most of the rest of the family. We ended up going out in the backyard to take some pictures, and there were, some times where we didn't need the boys. So Ben, who's 3.5, and JM, who's 5.5, were running around with the dog. And she was so excited. She was like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. She's doing that pouncing prance kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could explain that. It's that she's running as fast as she can, except not moving very fast because she knows that if she ran as fast as she can, the game would not last long.
Exactly.
My dog does that with me. I'm big enough that she can't knock me down by accident. Your 2 kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette. This time, Erin's going to talk about the uses of hand sanitizer.
Come on, every pony! It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette!
Erin, it's flu season, but I don't like getting flu shots because their makers almost always guess wrong on which virus they need to protect from this year. And even after I get one, I still feel sick. What's a good way to stay flu-free without getting a shot?
Well, I imagine you could break out your old Army chemical warfare suit.
Ha, very funny. I'm not spending the entire winter in Mop 4.
Well, assuming you don't want to make like Bubble Boy, your best bet is to avoid sick people, don't let anyone cough or sneeze on you or your food, and use lots of hand sanitizer. In fact, hand sanitizer is so useful that it belongs in every prepper's bag of tricks. Now, the reason hand sanitizer is so good against germs is because it contains alcohol. Unlike antiseptic soaps, which basically poison the bacteria, there's no worry about microbes becoming resistant to alcohol because it ruptures their cell walls. In other words, it rips their skin off, and there's just no way a microbe can build resistance to that through exposure. Now, in addition, sanitizers that contain at least 70% alcohol also kill fungi. And 90% solutions disable many, but not all viruses. So that's as close as you can get to a universal disinfectant. In fact, a University of Virginia medical school study showed that using hand sanitizers is more effective against fighting the common cold than washing your hands with soap and water.
Okay, so you're saying that I should skip all of this and just drink Everclear?
No. There actually is a school of thought that says if I get sick, the germs are in my blood, so I should drink alcohol and that will kill the germs. And the problem has to do with concentration. If you were to get enough alcohol in your system at enough concentration to kill the viruses, you would probably get alcohol poisoning.
Well, I guess there's downsides to everything.
Yeah. Now, there are two things that I want to point out. One, make sure that the alcohol stays on your hands for at least 30 seconds. If you do that, you kill 99.9% of the bacteria, and that number rises if you keep it on for a minute. So don't just put it on your hands and then immediately wipe it off with a towel or on your pants. Ugh. Just let it evaporate off naturally. And two, frequent use of sanitizer on your hands will strip away essential skin oils. So if you use a lot of it, or if you have dry skin like I do, it's a good idea to put some moisturizer on your hands a few minutes later. Now, of course, with this being a blue-collar prepping segment, there are other uses for hand sanitizer as well. The most common is to sanitize objects, such as first aid supplies like needles, or things that have been touched by people you don't know, such as computer keyboards and mice, especially if you've got a communal computer. Another handy use for it is a field expedient deodorant. If you happen to see a cute someone and your armpits are stinky, duck into the bathroom, rub some sanitizer into your pits or the back of your neck or wherever you feel stinky and sweaty, and it will do a number on the microbes creating the smell. I've done this. It works. It's not a long-term solution, but it's good until you start sweating again. And this also works really well on stinky feet with the toe jam. Sanitizer is also good for removing sticky residue from glue, adhesive tape, tree sap, and similar things. Just make sure that the surface you're removing the sticky from won't be damaged by the alcohol, because some plastics and rubbers begin to melt a bit in the presence of some alcohols. But that's not always true. It depends on the composition of the plastic and the concentration of the alcohol, so test before you try. Similarly, you can use it to clean your glasses if they're dirty or smeared with oil. But my absolute favorite use for hand sanitizer is that you can use it as fuel for a fire. Squirt a blob onto some tinder, like a cotton ball is perfect for this, apply a match or even a spark from a ferro rod, and that alcohol will burn with a clean, hot blue flame. And it'll burn for a long time, too, just the gel itself. So if you add fuel on top of it, it'll burn for longer. It is a great method for starting fires. So get some of those pocket-sized bottles of Purell or Germ-X or anything else that's at least 60% alcohol and put them in your everyday carry and in your get-home bag and in your bug-out bag. They are compact, multi-use, and shelf-stable.
All right, Aaron. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
Take care.
If you'd like to read more from Erin, check out her blog, lurkingrhythmically.blogspot.com.
Erin sent me a message today, and she said that she found out another good use for hand sanitizer. You can wipe off poison oak and poison ivy and poison sumac. It apparently washes that stuff out.
Good to know.
So if you get it on you, now don't wait until you've already broken out in hives. Wash that stuff off first, and it'll take care of it, hopefully.
Well, there you go.
Felons behaving badly. Suspect in crime spree across Greensboro shot by police in critical condition. Dateline, Greensboro, North Carolina. A crime spree across Greensboro on Tuesday afternoon ended with one suspect taken into custody, another in critical condition at the hospital, and multiple victims injured. Suspect 1, 26, of Greensboro is in critical condition after police shot him to stop a crime rampage that began at approximately 2:30 p.m. Police said the first incident, reported to Greensboro police, was an armed robbery at TJ Maxx, located at 4217 West Wendover Avenue.
Stop by and say hi.
Which occurred at 2:24 p.m. A witness reported a suspect pushed him while exiting the store and threatened him. The suspect then left in a Dodge driven by another person. At 2:53 p.m., officers saw the suspect vehicle and attempted a traffic stop at West Market Street and Spring Garden Street, police said. Suspect 1 fled from police. The other occupant, 50-year-old Suspect 2 of Greensboro, was taken into custody without incident. Suspect 1 eluded officers and was next reported as attempting to steal an occupied car on Thornton Court at 3:21 p.m., police said. The victim reported the vehicle was not taken. However, Suspect 1 allegedly struck her multiple times in the head. After this unsuccessful attempt at carjacking, the suspect continued fleeing on foot. A short distance later, Suspect 1 was able to steal a car at gunpoint and flee the area. Police said suspect 1, then driving the stolen car, hit a person on a golf course behind Waycross Road. The golfer suffered minor injuries. The suspect abandoned the stolen vehicle on the golf course and once again fled on foot. Police said over the course of the next 15 minutes, suspect 1 is suspected of committing at least 2 attempted carjackings and a house break-in. He then fled the area and drove to Murrow Boulevard at Market Street, where he collided with another vehicle and once again fled on foot in the vicinity of City View Apartments near Gorrell Street. Multiple witnesses stated he unsuccessfully attempted to steal other vehicles and broke into at least 2 residences, assaulting 1 person in the process. Witnesses directed police to suspect 1, who then confronted police. Police said at this time, 2 officers, R.E. Farrell and W.C. Tyndall, fired at the suspect, striking him. Suspect 1 was transported to the local hospital where he is in critical condition. Police believe suspect 1 may have committed other offenses throughout this 45-minute period and are asking anyone who may have been victimized to call 911 immediately. 45 minutes, 2 people arrested. The first guy's like, I give. And he's charged with common law robbery and felony conspiracy. Suspect 1 is charged with assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious injury.
Yeah, so you know how sometimes we read off the suspects' rap sheets and there's 4 or 5 charges on the same day and we're like, woo, that guy had a party. This is what that looks like.
Communicating threat, 610-2009, misdemeanor class 1. First-degree trespass, 610-2009, misdemeanor class 2. Burglary second degree, 723-2009, felon class G. Common law robbery, 723-2009, felon class G. Breaking and entering vehicles, 1-9-2010, felon class I. Larceny, 327-2011, misdemeanor class 1. Misdemeanor breaking and entering, 327-2011, misdemeanor class 1. Receiving stolen vehicle, 7/29/2011, felon class H. Common law robbery, 8/1/2011, felon class G. Breaking and entering vehicles, 8/8/2011, felon class I. Larceny, 8/8/2011, misdemeanor class 1. Larceny, 7/27/2013, misdemeanor class 1. Misdemeanor breaking and entering, 7/27/2013, misdemeanor class 1. Financial card fraud, misdemeanor, 7/28/2013, misdemeanor class 2. And larceny over 1,000 attempted, 9/19/2013, felon class I. And the guy that gave it up as soon as he got pulled over? Murder in the first degree, 8/10/1992, felon class A. Conspiracy solicit to commit murder, 8/12/1992, felon class E. Murder in the first degree, accessory after the fact, 8/12/92, felon class H. Murder in first degree, conspiracy, 8/12/92, felon class E. Maintain any place controlled substance, 4/9/2010, felon class I. Possess with intent to sell, schedule 2, 4/9/2010, felon class H. Possession of a firearm by a felon, 4/9/2010, felon class G. Trafficking, schedule 2, 4/15/2010, felon class G. And obtain property by false pretense, cheat services, 7/8/2013, felon class H. And that was an attempted. If you had to pick a person that was involved in a 45-minute crime spree, suspect 1 is your man.
Yeah.
So she says it's not a proxy war. But does that mean we should work with Russia and Syria? In this week's Foreign Policy for Grownups, I asked Nikki what she thinks. Nikki, now that the Popapalooza has ended and things are relatively back to normal, all we're hearing about is Russians in Syria. You already told us that this isn't a proxy war, so let's look at it from the other side. Should we work with Putin against anti-Assad forces?
Well, to the extent that it's possible to work with Putin in light of his continued aggression against his neighbors and the economic sanctions we've imposed against his regime, I'd say in this tiny, teeny, limited instance, yeah, we probably should. I've always been of the opinion that one of the most obvious common enemies Russia and the United States have is radical Islam. Not because Russia has some kind of deep religious mandate, but because it's also being overrun by Muslims, whose fertility rates are much higher than the Russians, especially given the relatively low life expectancy and high abortion rates. But I don't expect this administration to ever admit it was wrong in its Middle East strategy. And switching sides to support Russia, especially since they're the bad guy right now, is doubtful. The problem is that the current administration doesn't want to hand Putin a victory. And if we change our course in Syria, Putin will be able to gloat and say how right he was and how the United States is following Russia's lead. If you think Obama's going to let that happen, I have this bridge to sell you.
What about non-Syria issues? Is there a chance to mend relations and work with Russians instead of constantly bickering?
Cooperating with Russia? I think as long as Putin or his hand-picked minions are in power, our interests are just too disparate, as are our views on the world. Russia continues to view herself as a victim of the evil West that is trying to destroy her economy in order to usher in a regime change by causing oil prices to drop and kicking Russia in its economic nuts until the people become so dissatisfied with the status quo, they vote out the current leadership. The logic behind this is a bit unclear. If we really wanted to cripple Russia, we'd just implement a full embargo on Russian energy exports in conjunction with Europe. Now, the jump in oil prices would definitely sting economically, but it would also decimate Russia's economy practically overnight. I'm not so sure we want to do that. This would lead to a very unstable, volatile Russia, and who knows what they'd do if they actually had nothing to lose. Plus, remember how ushering in regime changes has worked out for us in the past? At least Putin is the enemy we do know. There are plenty of individuals who would vie for leadership of Russia who are a lot more unstable and a lot more crazy than Putin. Also, a lot more anti-West. Nature abhors a vacuum, and I'm pretty sure since the warm bag of crazy that would be a Vladimir Zhirinovsky presidency would have us yearning for the good old days of Putin. And by the way, Zhirinovsky actually announced his intention to run for president in 2018. If we do cause Putin's popularity to plummet so drastically due to economic collapse, is it so unrealistic to believe that a nut job like Zhirinovsky, who spends his days threatening violence against people he doesn't like and physically assaulting his political opposition on national television, while obviously marinating in whatever brand of rubbing alcohol he happened to have found in his medicine cabinet all day, could garner enough votes to win the presidency? So no, we don't want or need a regime change in Russia. But that's all a part of their victim complex. See, I think Russia is still smarting over losing the whole Cold War thing. There are people still in power and on the street who think Soviet-style communist rule is the way to go for Russia. And they point to the corruption, the rule of organized crime, the lack of law and order, and the volatile economy as proof that centralized control is best. There's a reason why they still consider NATO, and by NATO I mean the United States, as the biggest threat to their national security. I think fundamentally we're just very different cultures. I won't say that our government isn't filled with opportunistic politicians. I'm certainly not that naive. But what we see in Russia is more extreme. Their leadership is part nationalist, part religious fundamentalist, part expansionist, part envious, part power and control obsessed, and part market-oriented. Putin certainly understands that a fully centralized economy is going to result in economic chaos, much like it did the last time, and he made a big effort to join the World Trade Organization a few years back. But at the same time, why is he surrounding himself with extremist nuts like presidential aide Sergei Glazyev, whose entire shtick is to return to the economics of yesteryear, complete with price controls, interest rate manipulation, and economic isolation? Why is fascist fruitcake Alexander Dugin allowed anywhere near the Kremlin or its personnel after advocating an all-out war with Ukraine? There's a guy who runs this think tank in Moscow who 2 years ago published an article in Nezavisimaya Gazeta that advocated radical changes to the Russian constitution because the current version puts, get this, too much emphasis on human rights. Yeah. This douche, while not in government, had and probably continues to have a close association with former Russian Railways head and U.S.-sanctioned Putin crony Vladimir Yakunin, who's actually really, really close to Putin. So there's a part of me that's actually convinced that the Russian people, writ large, aren't made for freedom. Being oppressed in one form or another has pretty much become part of their national identity, and they just didn't know how to deal with this newly found freedom after the wall fell. But you know who did know how to take advantage of it? corrupt politicians and organized criminals, so they filled in the vacuum where the Russian people should have existed with their own brand of opportunistic swinery. This is so completely inconsistent with our national identity, our societal philosophy, and the fundamental ideals of our nation that working together with Russia seems to me to be an unrealistic and somewhat ridiculous pipe dream.
All right, Nikki, it was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Nikki blogs at thelibertyzone.com.
Plug of the week. So, we both do some shooting.
A little.
Once in a while.
Yeah.
Not nearly often enough, if you ask me.
Right.
And you need to have hearing protection.
Oh, yes, you do.
Now, for those of you who have never used powered hearing protection, where it has a microphone and you hear the whole world, and then when you shoot the gun, it quiets it down for you, it is the way to go. And for those of you who have, if you don't already have a set of Howard lights, you should buy a set. Go to the show notes. There's a link. It's an Amazon link. Current price for them, almost exactly $40 for the OD green ones. If you want to get fancy, you can get the purple ones for almost $49.
Hey, you like purple.
I do, but I don't like purple $10 extra. And it's like this lavender color, so it's like a girly purple, not a nice, manly, rich, royal purple.
Yeah.
Which is my color. I've been using these things for a long time. Now, we first met at the machine gun shoot.
The Lucky Gunner machine gun shoot in 2011? 2010? I don't know.
It was a
while ago.
And I'm in my trunk, and I'm fiddling with my earmuffs at the time. And these were these set of earmuffs where you had to pull them apart to put the batteries in.
Yes. I believe that Say Uncle had put on his blog the week or two before, hey, there's a special on Amazon for these powered earmuffs. They're like $25 or $30. And I bought a pair, and you bought a pair, and I think everybody bought a pair.
So this guy comes up to me with this kind of like goatee on and a real deep Southern accent and kind of a ponytail, I think. And he's like, I see you've got the same earmuffs as me. How do you put the batteries in? Well, that was Uncle. I had no idea at the time. I never met him. I knew what Say Uncle was, but I don't know what he looks like. So I show him how to do it. And I believe they turned out to be actually Tam's earmuffs. Well, those things sucked so bad because you had to disassemble them to put the batteries in, and you couldn't leave the batteries in them.
Yeah, ask me how I know.
So that didn't last, not at all. Well, there was another deal. These Howard lights came up, and they're always relatively cheap compared to, there's some real high-end ones that cost you $200. But I thought, well, I've seen these around because I go to the range, I shoot a couple of competition things, and I see them. I see people wearing them all the time. They're like the standard earmuffs that if you got a set of earmuffs, that's what you have, until you have enough money for a $200 set. I thought, I'll get me one of those. That's what I've used ever since. They have one volume controls both ears instead of one for each ear.
Which is handy.
You don't have to disassemble them to take the batteries out every time.
Which is more handy.
And the power switch stays in the off position when you throw it in your range bag.
Which is also a good thing.
Yes. So, Howard Light, Sport OD, electronic earmuffs, about $40. Go to the show notes, click on the link. And remember, it won't cost you any extra, but you're helping out the show by giving us a little bit of that Amazon money. You also found something for me.
So I bought this recently. It's a little Kydex clip, the Safariland hearing protection holder. It costs like $2 and change. I know you said that you never take off your hearing protection when you are at the range at all. So sometimes when we are at like an outdoor range and the range is cold, those earmuffs in the Tennessee heat can get ripe, shall we say?
Yeah, you get a little extra sweat on the inside.
Yeah. So I had been for a while taking them off and basically putting them around my leg. Well, if you do that for more than 3 or 4 minutes, then it just kind of falls down and it doesn't really work out so well. But this little clip, it's like it's one of those Amazon add-on things. So like they won't ship it to you separately. You have to order $25 or $30 worth of stuff before they'll even ship it to you. But anyway, it's cheap. I used it last weekend and they're great.
I've seen a lot of people use them. I tend not to take my hearing protection off at all because the only time I'm used to having to take them off is if, you get a little class circle going on and the instructor's saying something. Well, everybody really quick pulls their earplugs out and,
right.
Well, I just leave mine on. If I can't hear them, I turn the volume up. And this has come in handy the time the instructor whirled, drew, and put like 5 rounds into the target while the entire class was grouped around him with their hearing protection off.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We don't go back to that guy.
No.
We don't stay for the rest of the class.
No, didn't, in fact. Suddenly decided I had to be somewhere else. So we're not going to have a special guest this week, and when you listen to Weird segment, you'll understand why. Took a little bit of extra time to get through his segment. So we're going to jump straight to fun with headlines.
Woman's death could be linked to use of computer dust cleaner.
Oh my goodness. She's just trying to clean the dust off her computer and it kills her?
Right. Or, hey, maybe they're trying to do a little fear-mongering, right? And lady died of cancer after using dust cleaner for 30 years. Or a word of warning Tuesday night about a common household product that may have led to the death of a Dover, Delaware woman right here in Middle Tennessee. Murfreesboro police are investigating the woman's sudden death, and it could be related to the use of computer dust cleaner. Victim, 26, was found dead in room 233 of the Motel 6 on Chaffin Place in Murfreesboro on Saturday by her boyfriend. He told police he slept in the truck the night before because the two had gotten into an argument. The argument was over her use of the inhalants, said Murfreesboro police spokesman Sergeant Kyle Evans. An empty can of computer dust cleaner was in the room. Certainly, misusing this product is not only dangerous, it's illegal, Evans said. In this case, it resulted in this young lady's death that will be confirmed by the medical examiner's office pending an unattended death investigation. So, basically, she was huffing, and it killed her. There's a reason why you're not supposed to huff inhalants like that.
Okay, so you're telling me that this oxygen in the atmosphere is so important that I shouldn't suck on other chemicals so much that it displaces the oxygen in my breathing pathways.
Is exactly what I'm saying.
But it might be linked to use of the dust cleaner?
Might.
Use? She was using it?
Using
or was she
it
misusing
illegally?
it?
Yes.
So we got a question from a friend of the show, Ben C. Ben wanted to know how secure RFID credit cards were. This sounds like a great question for Barron in Tech Tips. Tech Tips. Tech Tips.
You are damaging my calm.
Tech Tips with the Barron. Barron, we had a listener write in with a question about RFID credit cards. How secure are they really?
Well, Sean, that's actually a pretty hard question to answer because it's one of those things that it's hard to get information on because the people who do this stuff believe in security through obscurity, which, in my world, is a gigantic red flag. One should rely on the security of their design and algorithm, not hope and pray that someone doesn't reverse engineer exactly what they built, because the truth is, someone will.
Well, that doesn't sound too promising.
It isn't, Sean. All the info I could find was from a few years ago when they first came out, and when I read quotes like the following: companies such as Chase, which issues the Blink card, and American Express, ExpressPay, claim the RFID chips are built with strong encryption, 128-bit, and triple DES, the data encryption standard, to protect information. To which my immediate thought is...
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
Now, let me enlighten you about a little bit of history about triple DES. DES was originally developed in the 70s. It was proposed in the Federal Register in 1975. After some leaning by the NSA, the algorithm was lowered in bit size with the claim that it would still be strong algorithmically.
I think I know where this is headed.
Yep. In 1990, there was a discovery of a vulnerability that could recover the ciphertext through the algorithm. At this point, triple DES was born, as the additional rounds of encryption would limit the impact of the vulnerability. In 2002, AES, the common encryption standard we use today, superseded DES. However, in 2005, for some reason, NIST extended DES's life to 2030.
What the hell? Why would they do that?
Good question, because in 2006, 2 universities demoed a machine that could crack DES in 9 days at a cost of $10,000. Another year of work later brought it down to 6.4 days. By 2008, they could do it under a single day. So here we are creating new credit cards in 2013 using a cryptographic algorithm that had been beaten to death in the mid-2000s, and you're telling me how awesome that is? To make it worse, evidently, many cards don't even bother to actually encrypt the data and transmit, and they just send it in plain text for anyone to see. Not to mention, there is no authentication mechanism for the point-of-sale system, so anyone with a little tech and know-how can skim your credit card using a decent antenna and a box.
How can you pile so much fail into a single design?
So, yes, that's a pile of suck and fail, but here's a little bit of good news. You can easily protect yourself with a metal sleeve to put your card in. While not ideal, it does work. Someone could sniff while you're conducting a transaction, but it limits your overall attack surface area. Next up, if you have additional cards that contain RFID systems within your wallet, interference is going to cause issues. You might be able to actually dig something out doing some very crazy math, but in the end, it's going to be very difficult and non-trivial. All this said, it's really just about the same level of suck and fail as the mag strip itself, except maybe someone might try to skim it, but I have not heard of any incident actually happening in the field.
Well, at least that's something.
Yep, personally, I'd ask my bank to replace it with a chip and pin or put it in a sleeve. Additionally, I'd suggest the same for your passport, which has an NFC/RFID system in it as well.
All right, Barron. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
Barron still blogs at the-minuteman.org. And now from our sponsor.
You know what will happen. If you ever have to defend yourself, you're going to end up in handcuffs. Are you trained to win the fight after the fight? Sure, you can draw, aim, and put 2 in the 10 ring, but have you learned your legal self-defense? Do you know the law? Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for your legal self-defense class. Each class is tailored to the laws in your state. Attorney Andrew Branco will teach you the law, not just what the law says, but what the judge's legal opinions say, what the jury instructions say. Sure, you could risk spending the rest of your life in prison because you followed the advice of some gun store counter jockey, or you could spend the day with the man who literally wrote the book on the law of self-defense. Carry a gun so you're hard to kill. Know the law so you're hard to convict. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for a legal self-defense class in your state. And make sure to use discount code VARIETY at checkout to receive 10% off. We're going to go a little out of order today and have Weird do his patented audio fisk before the J block. It's a long one because, debunking BS takes a lot more effort than just spewing it. Did you listen to the post-Oregon shooting campaign speech by Obama? Well, Weird tells you what he thinks about it in This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery. Hey, Weird, what do you got for us this week?
I'm going to be dealing with President Obama. First, let's give a little bit of timeline for this audio fisk. The speech President Obama gave was mere hours after the last bullet was fired in Roseburg, Oregon. Bodies were still warm, blood was still flowing from the wounds, and several hours after hearing this speech for the first time, I turned on the news and heard a major news network give dozens of facts about this shooting that we now know aren't true. So we knew practically nothing about this shooting when this audio was recorded. We didn't know who the shooter was. We didn't know anything about the shooter. We didn't know what weapons were used. We didn't know what his motives were. Hell, we didn't even know how many people were dead yet. But our president decided to make this speech.
As I said just a few months ago, and I said a few months before that, and I said each time we see one of these mass shootings, our thoughts and prayers are not enough. It's not enough. It does not capture the heartache and grief and anger that we should feel. And it does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America.
He's right. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. I am upset by this. I am sad for the families, and I'm certainly concerned for the next situation like this. But all of that isn't enough.
We don't yet know why this individual did what he did.
He admits up front that he knows nothing. But does that stop him from telling us what we're supposed to do? No way. How exciting that our president, the leader of our nation, is demanding things completely blindly.
Earlier this year, I answered a question in an interview by saying, the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws, even in the face of repeated mass killings.
I will also agree with him. Mass shootings happen in gun-banned zones. We need to improve our gun safety laws to eliminate gun-banned zones.
Somehow this has become routine. The reporting is routine. My response here at this podium ends up being routine. The conversation in the aftermath of it, we've become numb to this.
It has become entirely routine. The political response is exactly the same. The anti-gun people pull out their pre-planned playbook and start their post-shooting drill. Universal background checks, gun show loopholes, stand your ground. None of these have anything to do with mass shootings, but the anti-gunners have them first, second, and third in their playbook. You get the impression they don't really want to stop mass murder. They just want to use it to attack our civil rights.
It cannot be this easy for somebody who wants to inflict harm on other people to get his or her hands on a gun.
Well, in a nation with due process of law, it kind of is. And in the case of all of the recent mass shootings, the mentally ill killers had no criminal background. Yeah, it is. Unless you're proposing something far more sinister.
And what's become routine, of course, is the response of those who oppose any kind of common sense gun legislation. Right now, I can imagine the press releases being cranked out. We need more guns, they'll argue. Fewer gun safety laws. Does anybody really believe that?
First thing, the NRA at the time of this recording wasn't crafting any press releases because the NRA was waiting for the facts. Unlike the president, it's not the NRA that runs to stand on the bodies of the dead to try to score political points. That's why we call them blood dancers. As for more guns and less gun laws, the school banned guns and threatened expulsion or termination for all violators. Do you think the murderer cared that he might get expelled? The killers always target so-called gun-free zones. They want to murder people, not to get in a gunfight. The murderer shot himself as soon as the cops show up. The moment he faced effective resistance, he stopped the attack and killed himself. So yes, more guns might be the solution.
There are scores of responsible gun owners in this country. They know that's not true. We know because of the polling that says the majority of Americans understand we should be changing these laws, including the majority of responsible, law-abiding gun owners.
False. Obama is blindly repeating the paid-for push polls that ask airy, open-ended questions about how do you feel and never give specifics. Every time a law comes up and the specifics are discussed, the margins narrow considerably. Even in the blue states where anti-gun laws have passed in recent years, it's done so by narrow margins.
There is a gun for roughly every man, woman, and child in America. So how can you, with a straight face, make the argument that more guns will make us safer?
Because the killers only seem to go where guns are banned.
We know that states with the most gun laws tend to have the fewest gun deaths. So the notion that gun laws don't work or just will make it harder for law-abiding citizens and criminals will still get their guns, it's not borne out by the evidence.
Says the politician from Chicago who is currently living in Washington, D.C. Sorry, but tend to means vaguely correlated. Oddly, the safest states in the nation have some of the most relaxed gun laws. As the Washington Post points out, the main difference is suicide by gun, which is not an issue here.
We know that other countries, in response to one mass shooting, have been able to craft laws that almost eliminate mass shootings. Friends of ours, allies of ours, Great Britain, Australia, countries like ours. So we know there are ways to prevent it.
Oh, no, he didn't. He's calling for Australian and British-style mass confiscation of firearms, but he's using code words, hoping the average person doesn't know that that is exactly what friends of ours, allies of ours, have done in their desire to extinguish the right to keep and bear arms.
Somebody somewhere will comment and say, Obama politicized this issue. Well, this is something we should politicize.
Well, we know that Obama's only vague suggestions are A, ban guns like Australia and the UK did, or B, universal background checks, which is the anti-gun hobby horse du jour, but Oregon had universal background checks, and the killer followed them, and the antis keep telling us nobody is coming for your guns.
I would ask news organizations, because I won't put these facts forward, have news organizations tally up the number of Americans who've been killed through terrorist attacks over the last decade and the number of Americans who've been killed by gun violence.
And what does this have to do with anything? Well, it does show what fawning lapdogs the media are for the president, and it also does seem to vaguely compare gun owners to terrorists.
We spend over $1 trillion and pass countless laws and devote entire agencies to preventing terrorist attacks on our soil, and rightfully so. And yet, we have a Congress that explicitly blocks us from even collecting data on how we could potentially reduce gun deaths.
This is a bald-faced lie. Congress doesn't prevent collecting of data on how we could potentially reduce gun deaths. Congress only bans political hackery masquerading as medical studies. Since they aren't doing any studies, what does that tell you about the sort of data they were planning on collecting?
We collectively are answerable to those families who lose their loved ones because of our inaction.
Bravo, Sierra. I am not answerable to the families. I didn't murder anybody. You are not answerable to the families. You didn't murder anyone. But political leaders like Obama are. They support the policies that made these schools soft targets to dangerous people. Meanwhile, his children go to a school with heavy security and armed guards, as well as their Secret Service detail.
When Americans are killed in mine disasters, we work to make mines safer. When Americans are killed in floods and hurricanes, we make communities safer. When roads are unsafe, we fix them to reduce auto fatalities. We have seatbelt laws because we know it saves lives. So the notion that gun violence is somehow different?
The only people who think that gun violence is different than any other sort of danger are the anti-gun lunatics. When those other events happen, we work to prevent the next event. We look for logical, practical steps to prevent the harm and mitigate the damage. When the anti-gunners see mass murder in a gun-free zone, they work feverishly to make the rest of the nation just as gun-free.
That our freedom and our Constitution prohibits any modest regulation of how we use a deadly weapon?
Straw man alert. Use of a firearm is strictly controlled. You can't murder, you can't threaten, and nobody is challenging ordinances where discharge of firearm is illegal for anything but personal defense in a densely populated area. What he really means is, we've got so many laws already, what's a few dozen more?
When there are law-abiding gun owners all across the country who could hunt and protect their families and do everything they do under such regulations. Doesn't make sense.
Except you were just praising the UK and Australia where such activities are illegal.
I'd ask the American people to think about how they can get our government to change these laws.
Yes, end gun-free zones.
And that will require a change of politics on this issue. And it will require that the American people, individually, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, when you decide to vote for somebody, are making a determination as to whether this cause of continuing death for innocent people should be a relevant factor in your decision. If you think this is a problem, then you should expect your elected officials to reflect your views. And I would particularly ask America's gun owners who are using those guns properly, safely, to hunt, for sport, for protecting their families, to think about whether your views are properly being represented by the organization that suggests it's speaking for you.
I don't think he knows what he's asking for. The anti-gun side is calling for universal background checks, which is the laws in Oregon, and total gun bans and confiscation. Meanwhile, the NRA, which, did you notice how awkwardly he tiptoed around that, is trying to make schools, churches, malls, movie theaters, and states and cities more like the parts of the country that never see these kind of attacks. What side do you vote for?
And each time this happens, I'm going to bring this up. Each time this happens, I am going to say that we can actually do something about it, but we're going to have to change our laws. And this is not something I can do by myself.
Bring what up? You haven't proposed anything. You've only praised nations that have banned guns, but you're also claiming to respect the right of people to lawfully own guns. There is a reason for this foolish behavior. They know the laws they support won't work. They know they won't make us any safer. They don't care. They want to ban guns, and that's it. In Oregon, their universal background checks didn't save any lives. But it does make a neat little package for reducing gun ownership and make it easier to confiscate guns, which the president routinely mentions he supports. Also, you say you can't do it by yourself, when now you're proposing to use executive orders to pass gun control laws that America doesn't want. They are coming for our guns. And when they can't take our guns, they will pass laws to make us all like the poor little students getting shot, playing dead, and in one instance, charging at the shooter with nothing but his bare hands. I won't name the shooter, but I will name the hero. His name is Chris Mintz. He's an Army vet who on his 6-year-old son's birthday charged the gunman when he himself was unarmed to shut the door on him and protect his fellow classmates from the bullets. Mr. President, are you happy Mr. Mintz was unarmed that day, even though he's a combat vet and trained in small arms combat? Happy or not, are you supporting the policies that made the bad guy armed and the good guy defenseless? I'm going to do everything in my power to stop that, and I am not alone.
All right, Weird. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
In addition to appearing here, Weird is a regular host on the Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
And I gotta say it, Obama is a terrible speaker.
Yeah.
Oh, if I think this, you should do this, and then you should... Like, come on.
I don't know about you, but that sounded like he might have practiced that before.
Well, he had 5 whole hours to pull out his prepared speech.
Yeah, before that.
Yeah. They need to turn up the speed on his teleprompter. That's all I got to say.
There is that.
The reason that I wanted to do the J block after Weird's Audio Fisk is because I wanted to discuss the latest Michael Bain Downrange Radio podcast. And I want to play a couple of sound bites out of that for you.
I think this is the push, kids. I think this is it. I think this is the biggest Democrat / progressive / Barack Obama anti-gun push ever. It's coming. Here's why I think that.
These clips are not sequential in the podcast. I just cut a few pieces out and I want you to hear them. That was number 1. Here's number 2.
Over the coming weeks, this is the big initiative. Remember what the president said, the Australian model. What did Hillary Clinton say? The Australian model. What is the New York the New York Times, CNN, Huffington Post, MSNBC. What do they all say? They all say the Australian model.
Okay, that was clip 2, and here's clip number 3.
But this one's going to be ugly because this is the last hurrah. This is it. If they can't win this battle now with the great fool in the White House, they can't win this battle ever.
Well, that last bit I think is true. If they can't win now, they can't win ever. But I think really that if they can't win after 20 elementary school students were murdered at a school in Connecticut, that was the end of it right there.
But that doesn't mean they're going to stop trying. Everybody knows that the argument isn't over until the left wins. And then it's over, settled science and all.
Yeah, I understand that. Here's the thing. They couldn't get universal background checks, just universal background checks, which is, a private transfer ban, after Newtown. Do you really think that 9 college students murdered by some jerk who apparently singled out Christians is going to push them over the edge? Is that they just add a couple of bodies and the scales will tilt? Are you crazy? No, that's not what's happening here. Does anyone think they've actually got a chance to use this incident to get more gun control? When the town of Roseburg, the place that this latest shooting took place in, actually staged protests against Obama when he showed up on Friday. Armed people protesting the president as he comes into town. They have video of people open carrying at these protests. It's not going to happen. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that Obama's feeling the heat from the disastrous way he's handled Syria and the heat he's getting from the immigration issue, plus a few other things that we've all forgotten about because, oh my God, they're coming for our guns. And then Hillary. Hillary's trying to stay out of prison.
Yeah, she is.
She's desperately afraid that she's going to go to prison because she lost control of top secret emails on her super secret private email server.
And by lost control, you mean found by the FBI.
Found by everybody and their brother.
Yeah.
Honestly, the lost emails, they should have just, asked the Russians for it or the Chinese. They could have certainly supplied us a, complete list of everything that was on there.
Right.
And so, of course, Hillary, whose own husband said, oh, well, this is the reason that we couldn't, Al Gore couldn't be elected president was the assault weapons ban. Her husband's like, hey, don't get involved in that crap. But she's running straight out there, trying to get to the front so that she can say, oh, we need the Australian model, which everybody knows what Australian model is the code word for. It's mandatory buybacks and destruction of your center fire semi-automatic rifles, your pump action shotguns. The only semi-automatic firearms that were left were people who happened to be in competition shooting and begged and pleaded for permission, and people who did varmint control with 22 semi-autos. They, as Michael Bain points out, they are arguing right now whether it's okay to allow Australians to have a lever action 7-shot shotgun. That crazy killing machine. Oh, that's too powerful. No. All they get is double barrels.
Yeah.
That's the Australian model. So you really think when they couldn't get universal background checks, here are the little scare quotes around that, which is just a private transfer ban. They couldn't get that after 20 children were murdered in an elementary school. This isn't going to change that. They are certainly not going to get, you must turn in your AR-15 so that we can run over it with a bulldozer. That's not going to happen. So they know that. We should know that. So why are they doing it? They're doing it as a distraction. All they're doing is getting us freaked out about something so that we stop hammering on the things that are hurting them. Hillary's afraid she's going to prison. Well, what's better than going to prison? Losing a gun control fight.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know what's better than watching what little legacy you have go down the tubes because you just basically ceded Syria to Putin? Losing a gun control fight. I mean, how bad is it that the American public is going, well, at least that Putin guy knows how to kick his enemies' behinds, unlike Obama.
Yeah, no kidding.
I wouldn't pee in Putin's mouth if his tongue was on fire, but, at least he's killing his enemies. So they're coming after your guns only in the sense that they want us upset about this so that we stop arguing with them about the things that actually hurt them. This is just Obama changing the subject. So my advice is hold fast, stand firm against this storm, but don't forget that it's a sideshow. It's a distraction. And how bad must things be in the White House and the Clinton campaign that they view losing another gun control battle as an improvement on their situations? Stuff that grinds my gears. Well, Adam, why don't you go first this week?
Do you remember Brian Williams?
Yeah. I mean, he was like my closest friend. He and I took, gunfire together.
Right.
He was wherever I was and I was in danger, he was right there with me.
Exactly. Or he would just make stuff up to make himself look cool.
Well, it's true. I didn't remember him actually being there, but it was a convincing story.
Yeah, he told me he was there.
Right.
At my wedding.
Did you give away the bride?
Yeah. I'm sure that it's not surprising to everybody that Brian Williams is not the only person who does this. In fact, there's a story I like to tell that happened about 10 years ago. Sean, when I was in college, I decided to go and get my pilot's license. I got my very basic, private pilot's license, right? Not instrument rated, nothing, right? VFR only. Did it in 42 hours, which is extremely fast. The absolute minimum is 40 hours. And then I promptly never flew again. But about 2 years later, I had moved to Nashville. I'm at a party, and this guy had actually told us how he owned a Barrett M82. He was 23 years old. But he would always come up with an excuse as to why he couldn't bring it to the range.
Whoa, this is starting to sound fishy.
Yeah.
Did he have a Canadian girlfriend?
Probably had a Canadian girlfriend, yeah. So we're at this party, and there's, I don't know, 10 or 15 people standing around, and he starts telling somebody about how he is in the process of getting his helicopter license. And my ears perk up, and I'm like, oh, really? So what FBO do you fly out of? Because I've really been, thinking about getting my rotary endorsement. And he just kind of looks at me, and I said, fixed base operation? And he just kind of looks at me. I said, what airport do you fly out of? So when I tell this story to guys who have flown before, who have gone through any of this training, they're like, oh, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. But that's kind of one of those lingo things that...
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, oh, no. So I have a friend that is actually a certified flight instructor, and he's teaching me how to fly. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what FBO do you guys use? What airport do you fly out of?
Does he fly the helicopter to your house and pick you up in the front lawn?
Right. So he says, "Oh no, he has his own helicopter, and he lets me fly it." And I said, "Okay. Well, that's kind of cool, but so where do you guys fly out of?" "Oh, he keeps a helicopter in his barn." "Really? Okay. Well, that's nice. So, how far along are you in your helicopter training?" He goes, "Oh, I've got about 100 hours." I said, "Oh, okay. So how many hours does it take to get a helicopter license?" "Oh, like 200." "Okay, so you're 100 hours in and you're halfway." Yeah. Okay. So to our listeners right now who may not know, the FAA only requires 40 hours of instruction to get your helicopter license.
Right.
30 if you've got your fixed wing already. So finally, I asked the guy, okay, so you've got a friend who's letting you fly his helicopter. That's really awesome for him because I've heard that one of the big stumbling blocks is actually getting insurance on a helicopter if you have less than like 200 or 300 hours. What kind of helicopter is he letting you fly? Is it like a Robinson R-22, an R-44, a Mini 500? These are all very common training helicopters. And he goes, oh no, he's got a Black Hawk. So I said, okay, so let me get this straight. You have a friend who keeps a $60 million helicopter in a barn, and he lets you fly it.
Right. A $60 million aircraft that
he can't get.
I don't think civilians own.
Yeah, there's no surplus market for the Black Hawk. Needless to say, I have never seen that gentleman ever again.
Wow. Just don't lie to people. They're going to catch you.
Eventually, somebody is going to say, somebody that you are talking, about, like, oh, well, when I was in Special Forces, eventually you're going to come across the guy that's, got a Green Beret coin.
Yeah.
Eventually that's going to happen.
Somebody's going to ask you, about the Q course.
And you're going to go, the what? What? Yeah. So, Sean, how about you? What do you got?
Have you seen the Hero Defends Blind Kid beatdown video?
I have, and that was totally awesome.
Yeah. Here's the problem. We don't know what actually happened in that video.
But there's video, and the video is everything, right?
So what we've got is a video that starts from somebody pushing a guy away, and then he gets just beat down. I'm like, that was deadly force. If you hit somebody so hard that they go down and sort of go into convulsions, that is death or serious bodily injury right there. That is, by definition, serious bodily injury. Now, I don't suspect that the person who hit him intended for him to be knocked out. That right there, if somebody hits you like that, and you could use deadly force to stop them from hitting you again. So that's how serious that beating was. So it wasn't just some little ha ha ha, you got punched. This was very serious, about as serious as it gets. Now we all hope that dude really was a bully, because he certainly got a beat down.
Right.
But we don't know this. All we know is what the kid said in the video, don't be beating up on a blind kid, and the caption that came with it, and everybody passing around on the internet, oh, look, bully gets beat down for messing with a blind kid. What we've come to find out later is the kid wasn't really blind. Not in the sense that he was, could not see.
Right, he's legally blind.
Right. There's at least some people who were saying, dude, he started it. So we don't know. It's entirely possible he didn't start this, and he's attacked out of the blue while he's lawfully and morally responding to being assaulted by somebody else. We don't know that because guess what? We didn't see that part of the video, if there was that part of the video. And there's some people out there like, dude, we saw it, that's what they said. Look, here's why I'm willing to entertain that possibility, because it happened to me. I was in junior high, 7th grade, I think, and there's this kid there. He had hearing aids, he had terrible vision, he had health issues that none of us understood, and he's the younger brother of one of my principal bullies. And, there's a group of them, there always is. Sam, the younger brother, was a source of some embarrassment for his bully big brother. Because, nobody wants to be the older brother of the tard.
Right.
He's so impaired by his physical handicaps, honestly, I don't know if this guy was actually retarded, as we used to call people back then, or if he was just, physically handicapped. And you know how that happens. People are physically handicapped. Everybody just automatically assumes that they're mentally handicapped.
Right.
Talk to a few people who have cerebral palsy who are, every bit as smart as everybody else around them and sometimes smarter. But what do they get treated like? They get treated like they're stupid.
Right.
Ask around. See how that goes for you. Well, Big Brother says, you need to climb the social ladder. Here's the way to climb the social ladder. Get in a fight with this guy. Beat him up. So he sicks his little brother against me. Now, his little brother was the same age as me. Sicks his little brother on me and says, go get in a fight with him. And, well, what position am I in? I can either be the dude who bullies the retarded kid, or I can be the dude who got his ass kicked by the retarded kid. I mean, there's a choice right there. And if I let him hit me, then any pain and suffering I get in the process, I get that is on top of the embarrassment of getting beat down. They cornered me in a place where nobody was going to come rescue me. There was 3 or 4 of them, plus the brother, and me all by myself. And they goaded Sam into coming after me. And he stepped towards me and I punched him straight in the chest. Well, he flopped around like a fish for a little bit. Now, he never fell down, but he's standing there like, ugh. And I'm like, oh, now what's going to happen? Well, they were really concerned. They grabbed him and hauled him off and took off running. And all I can think of is, what if they'd have just pre-planned this? Oh, well, if he gets the upper hand, then we'll just beat him down for beating up the retarded kid. And then they could have told everybody that, oh, he was picking on Sam, and there's 3 of us and 1 of him, and Sam would have gone along with it. And they did this right in front of me. It wasn't even like I was surprised by this. They were telling me what was going on. They didn't have video cameras back then, thank God. Because, they'd have edited the video of me into me punching him, and that'd be the end of it. And look at him beating up on the retarded kid. And, then what happens to me? I'd have been expelled.
Famous on the internet for the wrong reasons.
In the end, on this video, we are never going to know what happened. We don't have the information. We're never going to have the information. And we're especially not going to have the information when every time somebody tells you something is different, oh no, this isn't true, you just reject that information because you saw the video. And it's not just this incident. Every single time you see one of these videos on the internet, you just make up your damn mind about what happened. Because, you saw the video. Well, there's a lot that happens outside that little tiny frame that you're not going to see. Both that frame in physical view and that frame in time. So I would like it if people would just accept those limitations, approach the situation with just a little bit of humility, and allow the police to investigate and determine what really happened instead of turning into a great big giant internet lynch mob. Can we just do that? Or is that just too much to ask?
Well, that's our show for the week.
Thanks again to Rob Allen for our music.
And thank you for listening to the GunBlog VarietyCast.
Constructive criticism can be sent to Sean at SeanSorrentino.com.
And hate mail to WizardPC at GunsCarsTech.com.
Like and share us on Facebook.
If you're one of those people that has Facebook.
And if you receive this podcast through iTunes, make sure to leave us a glowing 5-star review.
Show notes can be found at GunBlogVarietyCast.com/episode 60.
This is a URS production.